Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "If a man has good corn or wood, or boards or pigs, to sell, or can make better chairs or knives, crucibles or church organs than anybody else, you will find a broad, hard-beaten road to his house, though it be in the woods." This quote is more popularly known in its misquoted form as, "Build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door." As brilliant as Emerson might have been, entrepreneurs and great marketers will point out that he overlooked an important step. Without a well-planned and well-executed marketing plan, even the best mousetrap ever made won't find a single customer. Many people fear the marketing section of the business plan. As you can guess, this section takes a lot of work to complete. You have to do a lot of research to get it right. But by now, you've either done most of the research that you need to do, or you have the skills and tools necessary to do it. Now, the marketing section is typically broken into two parts. One based on your research and analysis, and the other presents the marketing plan. I think the best way to illustrate all the components of the marketing section of your business plan will be to look at it through an example and break it down so that we can see why it does what it does. So, let me take a few minutes to read this example, and then we'll spend the rest of the lecture pulling it apart to see what's going on. The example comes from a company called Metro Groom. Here it is. Bill is a middle-aged professional who is looking for a place to get his hair cut. He'd like to get his hair cut in a place where he can relax and feel at home for a short time during his busy day. His office is 30 minutes away from his home, and he usually picks a barbershop close to work. So far, Bill hasn't found a salon that he feels totally comfortable with. He's been going to franchised salon stores, and he hasn't been happy with his experience. Often, the stylists talk about things he's not interested in, or they don't give him useful grooming tips for improving his appearance. He makes around $50,000 a year, but doesn't want to spend a lot of money on his haircut. But he'd still like that special touch that he remembers from his childhood when he'd go to the corner barbershop. With his free time, Bill and his wife spend a lot of time with the kids going to museums and participating in outdoor activities like hiking and camping. But he enjoys reading, listening to public radio, and going to local sporting events. Well, currently, there are 435,000 professional men like Bill who work in the greater metropolitan area. That's where Metro Groom comes in. Metro Groom is a hair salon designed to deliver an experience reminiscent of the corner barbershop, but with modern updates and professional efficiency. Currently, the two top choices for customers like Bill to choose from are Sport Clips and independent barbershops. Sport Clips is designed around a sports theme. While the environment is inviting for the customer, the stylists interact with customers in a manner similar to other large hair franchises. This interaction is similar to the independent barbershops in the area, but Metro Groom will be professionally run to ensure efficient customer turnover. After all, while the professional customers want a relaxing environment to cut their hair in, they don't have all day to wait around either. Metro Groom is the best of both worlds. It's a place where a professional man can get a barbershop experience while receiving the time-saving benefits of a franchised operation at a reasonable price. We expect the first Metro Groom store to capture just shy of 1% of the market in the first year. Our research on the hair salon industry suggests that with 10 chairs operating on an average of 75% capacity for 310 business days per year, and with the average number of haircuts each chair can potentially maintain as being 20, that we could provide 46,500 haircuts per year. If the average professional male gets their haircut once per month, that means in the greater metropolitan area, there are 5,220,000 haircuts per year in our area. So, that means we expect to get just shy of 1% of the market in the first year. And at an average price of $20 per haircut, and the average customer getting their haircut once per month, that's $930,000 in revenues for us in the first year. Or, to put that another way, each chair brings in $93,000 per year. Now, that's pretty good since the industry average is $80,000 per chair. Now, at first, we'll fly under the radar screen of our competitors, but once we refine the model of our first store and figure out its final configuration, we'll plan to open more locations over the next 3 years, probably around 5, which will turn us into a $5 million operation in a short time. With this track record, we eventually plan to sell franchises of Metro Groom all across the country. So, this shows how you might use information from the marketing section to give a description of the customer and target market. Now, that sounds pretty thorough, doesn't it? Well, you can sound like that when you've done your research well, but let's take a closer look at this example to see how this section of the business plan was built. One of the first things you might notice is how this example spins together primary market research, secondary market research, qualitative market research, and quantitative market research to create a story of who the target customer is. I'll just pull out a quick example of each. It was probably primary market research that discovered Bill hasn't been able to find a salon that he's comfortable with. They probably learned this through a survey, but it was most likely secondary market research that learned there were 435,000 professional men like Bill who work in the greater metropolitan area. This sounds like information you'd find sifting through government data. It was probably qualitative market research, such as an interview or a focus group, that helped Bill find out that his salon needed to be more like the corner barbershop he remembers from his childhood. Now, that would be hard to learn from a secondary source or from a questionnaire asking you to rate things on a scale from 1 to 10. And lastly, it was probably quantitative market research that helped him realize that stylists often talk about things he's not interested in, or they don't give him useful grooming tips. This seems more like information that you could learn by asking people to rate what they value most and least during a visit to a salon when asked to rate options on a scale from 1 to 10. Another thing you'll notice is that his description involves some information on the industry. I suggested in the last lecture that you should include an explanation and breakdown of the industry in the business description of the business plan. I suggested describing your business in the context of the larger industry in that section rather than in the marketing section. Some sources will tell you to include in the marketing section instead. Either way will work. It's really a matter of what works best for your business, but you'll definitely have to include it in there somewhere. Okay, what else does this example communicate? This description explores the customer, the pricing, and the competition in much greater detail than we've done so far, and this is really good. This course is designed to build on the information of previous lectures as we go along. So, let's go deeper now and see what we need to know about the customer, about pricing, and about the competition to write the marketing section of your business plan. Let's start with the customer. As this business plan explains who the target customer is, it points out that the critical needs of the customer aren't being met. It also includes some important demographic information about the customer and where they're located. A middle-aged man living in the greater metropolitan area. There's another interesting detail it mentions about how many haircuts the average professional male in that area gets. It says they get 1 per month. Now, this is an important point that you'll want to include in the marketing section of the business plan. Are there any seasonal or cyclical purchasing trends? In this case, the purchasing trend is how frequent professional males get haircuts. Now, this reflects a pretty steady stream of business because of the frequency of the cycle, and not everyone gets their haircut on the same day every month. But other companies have predictable purchasing trends that can have a real impact on how and when they do business. So let's consider plant nurseries. They do a lot of business in the spring and summer, but have a lot less to do in fall and winter. Or we could even consider a small engine repair shop. You might fixed lawnmowers all spring and summer, leaf blowers in the fall, and snow blowers in the winter. These differences could have a seasonal impact on revenue expectations. Or consider B2B businesses or businesses that rely on government or corporate contracts. They might be subject to annual or quarterly budget schedules. If your industry runs on these types of schedules, you need to learn that, and you also need to include it in this section of your business plan. You need to talk about these fluctuations in the revenue stream and explain how you're going to deal with that. Then we learn a little more about the size of the market and the size of the market share that they hope to gain. To calculate this, they took the number of professional men in the metropolitan area, and that was 435,000, and they multiplied it by the average number of haircuts these men got every year, which at one per month is 12. And they conclude the market they're competing for is 5,220,000 haircuts by professional men in the metropolitan area each year. So, they've numerically demonstrated the size of the market segment they're after. Then they had to show how much of that market they intend to capture. Here's how they do this. Using information they've gathered from industry standards, they conclude that each chair in their shop has the maximum capacity of giving 20 cuts per day, and that barbershops are open 310 business days per year, and that the average chair operates at 75% of its maximum capacity. Well, they multiply 20 cuts per day times 310 days per year times 75% capacity. They learned that each chair will serve 4,650 customers per year on average, and they plan on starting out with 10 chairs. So they multiply 4,650 by 10, and that gives them 46,500 haircuts per year. When they compared 46,500 cuts that Metro Groom is going to give in the first year to those 5,220,000 cuts that will be given in that year, they concluded that they'll capture just shy of 1% of the market in their first year. Okay, calculating how much of the market share you hope to capture can be a tricky thing, but it's important to make this estimate based on your best information and explain the logic behind how you came to your conclusions. This can be calculated in revenue, in number of customers, or you can do both. So we'll want to add this to our toolkit. Looking at Metro Groom as an example, we want to add calculate the size of your market to your toolkit. So this gets us into pricing. But how does pricing work? Well, pricing can be a complicated thing to peg for your business because you're balancing between being competitive and being profitable. But there are ways to go about figuring it out. Let's look at the difference between pricing a service that you offer versus selling a product because they're a little bit different. Let's start with pricing services. Now, by services, I mean things such as teaching piano lessons, tutoring, offering tax services, carpentry, basically any service that you charge someone an hourly rate for. If you're experienced in the industry, you're probably already pretty familiar with what you can charge. But if you're just starting out, there's a standard formula for calculating this. Now, once again, if this is something that would apply to your business, then it's extremely important that you add this to your toolkit. And here's how it works. It considers 4 factors: your desired annual salary, your overhead cost, your desired annual profit margin, and how many billable hours you're going to have in a year. Your desired annual salary simply reflects how much you'd like to make each year. Your overhead cost include any cost you incur to do business, and that might be things like the cost of computers, telephone bills, rent, supplies, insurance, and even travel expenses. Your desired annual profit margin is different from your salary. And As a business owner, you'll want to earn a profit over and above your salary and overhead expenses because your salary, it doesn't count as your company's profits. You see, your salary is actually a cost of doing business. There's not really a set standard for an annual profit margin, but a common goal is 10 to 20%. The last piece of this equation is your billable hours. So, you might think that since there are 52 weeks in a year and 40 hours in a work week, that you might calculate your billable hours by multiplying these two numbers and, well, that would get you 2,080 hours. Well, that might be the case, but when you factor in vacation days and administrative duties, marketing your product, and seeing to the accounting, you might find that much less of your time is actually billable to that customer. It'll be different from company to company, but you can probably expect that about 25 to 35% of your time, it's not going to be billable. So to calculate how much to charge your customer, you simply add your desired salary and your overhead cost, and you bring them together. Then you multiply that by the profit margin percentage that you'd like, and you add that to your desired salary and your overhead cost. Then you divide that by the total number of billable hours, and this is going to get you your hourly rate. So, if your desired annual salary is $50,000 and your overhead costs are $5,000, and you hope to make a profit margin of, let's just say 10%, your billable hours are 1,560 hours. Now, this number represents 75% of 40 hours per week for 52 weeks. Then, to calculate how much you have to charge your customer per hour, you add your salary and your overhead cost, and you get $55,000. Then, you multiply that by 10%, and that gives you $5,500. Add that to $55,000, and you get $60,500. Then, you divide that by the number of billable hours, which roughly equals $38.78 per hour. You could then round that up or add in a margin for error. But when you look at these four variables and calculate how much you need to charge someone for your services, you might learn that you need to charge your customers $38.78 an hour to work for them. If you do some research and learn that other businesses in the area are only charging $30 an hour for the same services, that's when you learn your goal to be profitable and competitive is out of balance. Then you need to figure out how you can cut your costs to get your rate down or offer a better service to warrant that higher price. Of course, that strategy will need to be outlined in this part of your business plan as well. So, let's move on to pricing products. Pricing products can be a little more straightforward, and we covered most of what you need to know in the last lecture. I mentioned in the business model lecture that you should consider your product's pricing, that it's going to be influenced by where it's going to be sold. Selling your product at high-end, middle range, or low-end places will have an impact on how much you mark an item up. People just expect to pay more at a high-end place, and they'll pay less at a low-end place. And after building your prototype, you probably have a good sense of how much it's going to cost you to make and even distribute your product. I'd mentioned adding 25 to 50% to your estimated cost to be sure you don't underestimate. Metro Grooming took a different approach and based their pricing on what the market currently asks. The average haircut in the area costs $20, so that's what they're going to charge. That means they're not planning to compete on price, but rather atmosphere and efficiency, offering a corner barbershop feel with the efficiency of a franchised operation. You'll just need to explain how your pricing works, including costs such as materials, distribution, advertising, and overhead. And you'll also include the profit percentage you expect. I should also mention that if your marketing plan includes discounting, special introductory offers, coupons, discounts for referring friends, free trials, or buy one, get one free offers, then you'll want to outline that strategy in the marketing section as well. So, that concludes what you'll include in the first part of the marketing section, where you look at the research and analysis. The next part of the marketing section of your business plan will outline your marketing plan. This will include your market penetration strategy, a growth strategy, a strategy to reach your customers, and a sales strategy. Let's look at what Metro Grooming did to see how they laid this out. Now, remember, here's what they said. At first, we'll fly under the radar screen of our competitors, but once we refine our model of our first store and figure out its final configuration, we'll plan to open more locations over the next 3 years, which, if we open 5 stores, will turn into a $5 million operation in a very short time. With this track record, we eventually plan to sell franchises of Metro Groom across the country. So, they've outlined a penetration strategy, and that means to open one location and compete on atmosphere and efficiency. This one location will tweak its operations and business model to make any necessary adjustments. Then, they have a growth strategy. They'll use the success of their first location to open 5 more locations in the metro area over the next 3 years. And then, they plan on using the success of these locations to begin selling Metro Groom franchises all over the country. When you write your business plan, you'll want to think about your penetration strategy and how you intend to grow your business over time. Now, we'll talk more about milestones in the milestones section of the business plan, but you'll definitely want to outline a strategy of how you intend to grow in the marketing section as well. They also mention the competition here. Many people will tell you to do your competitive analysis in the marketing section of your business plan, and this might make sense for you. I suggest mentioning who the direct and indirect competition is, the highlights of their strengths and weaknesses, and how you plan to compete with them. But I also suggest dedicating an entire section of your business plan to the risk of entering the market. This uses an approach called Porter's 5 Forces model to take a bigger look at your competition and other barriers to entering the market. We'll get to that in a few lectures. But now, let's create a marketing plan for Metro Grooming. Metro Grooming has done what any good marketing section of a business plan will do. It's identified its list of prospects. This was done by creating a customer profile, that was Bill, and identifying how many people like Bill there are in the metro area. Your marketing plan can rely on a sales strategy, a marketing strategy, or it can rely on a combination of both. If you're going to rely mostly on a sales approach, you'll need to take your list of prospects and map out how you're going to get in touch with them. Are you going to have a sales force? Are you going to rely on outside distributors and resellers? How many salespeople are you going to need? And how will you pay them? Maybe you'll be your only salesperson at first, and that's okay. But you'll have to explain that and also explain how you're going to manage that along with all the other responsibilities of running the business. If you're going to rely mostly on a marketing approach, here are some of the most common ways entrepreneurs use to reach their customers. Print ads, radio and TV, direct mail. So let's go through these one at a time. So let's start with print ads. Print ads mostly include advertisements in newspapers and magazines. Now, you might also include billboards as a print ad as well. It really just refers to an advertisement that is printed, and you usually don't know the exact information about everyone who views it. For example, if you advertise in the New York Times, you know a lot of information about the type of person who subscribes to that paper, but you won't necessarily know that John Smith on 10 Main Street received your message. There has been talk in the business world saying that print advertising is a thing of the past because so many companies are moving things online. But that just doesn't seem to be the case. It's still part of many successful marketing strategies in magazines and newspapers that they can provide you with detailed information about the demographics of their customers and how many customers they have. This will really help you figure out if it'll be a good way to reach your customer or not. They even came up with new ways to keep print relevant, like using QR codes and NFC technology. QR, it simply stands for Quick Response Codes. They're a great way to bridge the gap between print ads and the internet. It works by giving you a code that you can scan into your smartphone that will automatically take you to a special offer or to the company's website. NFC stands for Near Field Communication. They work in a similar way that QR codes do, but they're less clumsy and they're much easier to use. Now, it'll be exciting to see how these advertising technologies develop in the many years to come. One thing to keep in mind, though, newspaper ads are only good for a day because not many people read yesterday's newspaper. Magazines have a longer shelf life because people will hang on to them for a few months. And there are also many niche magazines these days, so you can really target specific customers pretty well. But if you're going to test print ads as an option for you, I'd encourage you to run multiple ads over a period of time to test its effectiveness rather than just trying it once and then just drawing a conclusion. Sometimes it takes a few exposures before you can get the results that you need. So, would print ads be a good way to reach Bill? Well, maybe. Based on the description we have of him, we know that he commutes to work 20 minutes each day. There might be a billboard along his route that we could invest in. We can keep that in mind as a possibility, but we don't have any information to suggest that he reads newspapers or magazines, so this might not be our best option. What about radio and TV? While national television and national radio can be expensive and usually don't make sense for most entrepreneurs, local radio and local TV can be surprisingly affordable options. Here you're buying both an audience and specific time slots. You'll want to consider the cost of both and think about it in terms of cost per thousand. Now that's simply a calculation of how many people you're reaching divided by how much money you're spending to reach them. That'll tell you how much it'll cost you to get your message to one person. It's often pretty easy to get production assistance from the stations while creating your ad as well. So, do you think radio or TV would be a good option to reach Bill? Well, we did learn that he likes to listen to public radio, so that might be a great way to reach him. Maybe we could invest in an advertisement with a special offer during the times he's most likely to be commuting to and from work. That sounds like a great possibility. But again, TV wasn't really mentioned as a way that he and his family spend their leisure time. Instead, they like to go to museums and go camping, and oftentimes they go hiking, so we might not want to advertise on TV. How about our next marketing strategy, direct mail? Direct mail includes catalogs, brochures, letters, postcards, and many other kinds of printed advertisements. You buy very specific mailing lists of people in the demographic you're interested in and mail offers directly to their door. If you decide to explore direct marketing, I'd suggest getting in touch with the Direct Marketing Association. They'll provide you with helpful information to guide you. Unlike print ads in newspapers and magazines where you just have general demographic and circulation information, when you develop a direct mail program, you'll know exactly who received your ad and exactly when they received it. When people become your customer or show interest in your company through these ads, you usually create a database of names and addresses and send scheduled catalogs and other notifications to them. When I think of direct mail companies, I often think of the historic Sears and Roebuck catalog or the JCPenney catalog. You might recall these as well. What about a direct mail campaign to reach out to Bill and the 435,000 people like him in the metropolitan area? Well, we certainly know enough about these potential customers to buy a mailing that accurately reflects this target market. And though there are so many new ways to market to people, the data is still showing the vast majority of people still spend a lot of time reading and sorting through advertisements that they receive in the mail. So I'd certainly consider a direct mail campaign as a great option to start this business. Now, these are just a few of the most common ways entrepreneurs are reaching their customers. There are many, many other ways. You can use online marketing tools, or you can buy paid search items, and display advertising. These are great options even for small businesses because they're cheap and they're effective. There's partnership marketing, where you join forces with an established company to get your name out there. You can sponsor events like concerts, marathons, or sporting events. You can contact local newspapers or local news stations to see if they'll be interested in doing a feature of local entrepreneurs and local businesses. They do these types of stories all the time, and it's a great way to get some attention. I'd encourage you to consider as many avenues to your customer as you can before committing to a strategy. The trick is to find the way that makes the most sense for your product, your service, but most importantly, your customer. That's why the market research is so important. You need to know enough about them to narrow their customer profile and know what it is that they do. What is the best, most efficient way to reach them? Because you likely won't have the resources to do them all. To figure out where to start, it might be a good idea to pretend that you only have one approach that you can take. And if that were the case, ask yourself, if I only had one chance to reach my customer, which one would I choose? Then you can build from there. The marketing section is one of the most important sections of the plan because what you cover in here will have a great effect on other parts of the plan. It'll cover how many customers you plan to sell to and how much you plan to charge them, as well as how you intend to make them aware of your company. So that when you do build a better mousetrap, the world will actually beat a path to your door.